Hello everyone, welcome back to another Blu-ray review. Today we're going to be taking a look at a rather large and important Blu-ray edition, and that is Godzilla, the Showa-Era Films from 1954 to 1975, and this is put out by the Criterion Collection, and as you can see here, it is a rather large, almost coffee table sized book. And this is just one of my absolute favorite editions that I have in my collection. I don't know if many of you can tell, but the name of the channel is Capzilla Productions for a reason, and that is of course a take on Godzilla. And what is also important about this particular set is that it is the 1000th spine number for the Criterion Collection, so that is significant. I know there were a lot of people, when this was announced at the time, were kind of wondering why the Godzilla films, but to me, I've always viewed the Godzilla films as just this absolute iconic franchise that has spanned the decades. It's gone all the way from 1954 all the way through the present. They are still making Godzilla movies within the franchise right now, and it is appropriate that I'm doing this video now because we just got one about a month ago, and this is the first era of Godzilla films, the Showa era. There are several eras of Godzilla films, specifically those put out by Toho, the Japanese company that have been putting these out for decades. Each era has a different name. First era is the Showa era, the second is Heisei era, the third is the Millennium era, and the current that's going on right now is the Reiwa era. And I'm hoping that one day someone will put together more releases like this, at least here in the United States. I know they've had DVD releases of all of the films collected together for many, many years, but I would really like a nice, high-definition Blu-ray release. I think they've done one in Japan, but here would be nice, but that's a whole rights issue thing. But as you can see here, this set is absolutely massive. I have to lean back quite a bit just to get this to fit in the frame. And like I said, it is a coffee table-sized book edition, so it is kind of a quasi-digibook edition, but I'll get into all of that. As you can see here, just has gorgeous original artwork, both on the front and on the back and on the inside, and the artist who did all of that work is Yuko Shimizu, and she has done several pieces of art for several releases from Criterion, but this is probably her magnum opus when it comes to all of the artwork she's done. So as you can see, here is the front. As you can see here on the spine, it does say 1000. And of course it says the Criterion Collection. And also it says Godzilla, Showa Era, which you've already seen from the front. And moving to the back here, there's a list of all of the movies. There are 15 movies on 8 discs. The 8th disc is a disc that's just all special features, so there are quite a couple of films on each disc, but I'll go through the disc by disc breakdown once we open this. But as you can see here, there is a list of special features as well as a blurb about just Godzilla in general, and I've always been a big fan of the Godzilla films, and it was really nice going through this set. Some of these I actually hadn't seen before, so that was really cool. It was just an interesting traverse through that era of filmmaking and the kaiju films and stuff like that. So getting a closer look, you can see all of the detail here on the back. And there is artwork underneath this, but this is actually still staying on. This release came out in the fall of 2019, and this paper is still holding on pretty good. But yes, there is art underneath. So just reading off all of the stuff here on the back, specifically the special features, it says Godzilla, the Showa-Era Films, 1954 to 1975. In 1954, an enormous beast clawed its way out of the sea, destroying everything in its path and changing movies forever. The arresting original Godzilla soon gave rise to an entire monster movie genre, the Kaiju Eiga, but the king of the monsters continued to reign supreme in 14 fiercely entertaining sequels over the next 2 decades. Godzilla defended its throne against a host of other formidable creatures, transforming from a terrifying symbol of nuclear annihilation into a benevolent, if still belligerent, Earth protector. Collected here for the first time are all 15 Godzilla films of Japan's Showa era, in a landmark set showcasing the technical wizardry, fantastical storytelling, and indomitable international appeal that established the most iconic giant monster the cinema has ever seen. That basically summed it up better than I ever could. So Godzilla is an all-time icon for several reasons, and it really all starts here in this set. So going over the special features here. 8 Blu-ray Special Edition Collector Set features. High-definition digital transfers of all 15 Godzilla films made between 1954 and 1975, released together for the first time with uncompressed monaural soundtracks. I guess I should address this here right now. Some of the transfers look okay, some of them don't. It's really a mixed bag when it comes to the picture quality here. And I think that's really all goes down to whatever masters that Criterion got from Toho. I think whatever the original elements that they have were probably the best you could probably find. So it's really just a mixed bag of all of that. The original film looks really, really good. Some of the others, not so much. And I'll get into the reasons why I think some of these films don't look so good. Specifically because there are multiple movies oftentimes on one disc. There's never more than 3, but when there's 3 movies on the disc, there is some compression issues that I noticed. Specifically when it came to the bitrate. The bitrate on the discs that have 3 movies versus the bitrate on the discs that have 2 movies were radically different. Usually the 3-disc ones, the bitrate really never went above like 22 or 24. The other ones were in the 30s, which is kind of where you want them to be. But the first film has its own disc, but you'll see all that breakdown once I open this up. But unfortunately, these are probably the best they're going to look unless we get some, significant remastering, significant restorations. I'm not quite sure how much, effort went into all of this, but it's nice to have them all in high definition in general. So, next up here we have audio commentaries from 2011 on Godzilla and Godzilla King of the Monsters, featuring film historian David Kalat. International English language dub tracks for Invasion of Astro Monsters, Son of Godzilla, Destroy All Monsters, Godzilla vs. Megalon, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and Terror of Mechagodzilla. Directors Guild of Japan interview with director Ishiro Honda, conducted by director Yoshimitsu Banno in 1990. That's really interesting because that goes for about 50-something minutes, so it's a really significant interview. And for those of you who don't know who Ishiro Honda is, Ishiro Honda directed most of these movies, and he's probably one of the most well-known directors in Japanese cinema history, in my opinion, and I think just in general. And he was really the mastermind behind a lot of stuff that we now know about Godzilla and, that world of monsters. Next up is programs entailing the creation of Godzilla's special effects and unused effects sequences from Toho releases, including Destroy All Monsters. New interview with filmmaker Alex Cox about his admiration for the Showa-Era Godzilla films. That only runs for about 5 minutes. I really wish it ran a lot longer because Alex Cox is a very interesting individual. He is a filmmaker who has his film in the Criterion Collection of Repo Man, and that's a great film. Get that film, watch that film if you can. Next up here is new and archival interviews with casting and crew members, including actors Bin Fiura, Sugutoshi Komada, Haruro Nakajima, and Akira Takarada, composer Akira Ifuku, and effects technicians Ashio Ire and Aizo Kamai. Interview with critic Tado Sato from 2011. Illustrated audio essay from 2011 about the real-life tragedy that inspired Godzilla. Trailers, new English subtitle translations, plus a lavishly illustrated deluxe hardcover book featuring an essay by cinema historian Steve Reifel, notes on the films by cinema historian Ed Godziewski, and new illustrations by Arthur Adams, Sophie Campbell, Becky Cloonan, Jorge Coelho, Jeff Darrow, Simon Gain, Robert Gooden, Benjamin Mara, Monorobot, Takashi Akazaki, Angela Reza, Yuko Shimizu, Bill Sienkiewicz, Katsuya Tarada, Ronald Wimberly, and Chris Wasinia. As you can see here, just a lot of stuff going into. Most of the special features that I just read off are on that 8th disc. All of the ones that said 2011 were all on the first disc, which is an exact copy of the Godzilla Blu-ray release that came out years ago from Criterion. It's even the same exact picture and audio quality. It's just the same disc with a new menu and new disc art. So opening it up here, it opens exactly like a digibook would, and we get just an amazing original art piece. And next up here is kind of a table of contents, and then we get the essay by Steve Rifle, which is called Reign of Destruction. And as you can see here, the binding isn't quite great. So there's this essay, goes for a couple of pages, and then we get into the movies proper. Each movie has a double-page spread. On the left is a write-up by Ed Gazowski, and on the right is a really cool original artwork piece for each of the films. First up here is Godzilla, the original film, which started it all in 1954, and quite honestly for me, the best Godzilla movie, not only in this set, but I just think in general. It's a really amazing movie because it's just an expressionistic, beautiful film, all about kind of the existential dread in that post-war Japanese culture and just the post-war world in general, about the fear of nuclear weapons and just the H-bomb and stuff like that. It's a really amazing film. There is also an American version of the movie that's called Godzilla King of the Monsters, and that film isn't quite as good as this one because it adds in just an American English plot line, essentially. I absolutely love this movie. I apologize for the glare. So, second film is Godzilla Raids Again. Once again, sorry for the glare. And then the third film is King Kong vs. Godzilla. So the new film that just came out isn't the first time King Kong and Godzilla have thrown down. Unfortunately, when you get to this disc, it is the US release. But they do have the King Kong vs. Godzilla Japanese release as a special feature on that 8th disc, which is really cool because they change a lot of stuff when it comes to the US version versus the Japanese version. The Japanese version is a lot better than the US release version. Trust me, the US release version, I'm not a big fan of that at all. But here we go. Next up is Mothra vs. Godzilla. I absolutely love Mothra. When it came to a lot of the monsters that were introduced in these films, some of them had actually had their own individual film beforehand. Mothra had one, I think Rodan had one, and of course King Kong had his own film. But Mothra's always been one of my favorite kaiju characters. And I just love this artwork. Next up here is Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. Next is Invasion of Astro Monster. And next is Ibira Horror of the Deep. And then, kind of after Ibira Horror of the Deep, for me, the films kind of take an interesting turn. They kind of get more childish, they get more lighthearted. Godzilla becomes more of a hero, more of a protector, stuff like that. And what's interesting is that the films kind of go down in quality a little bit. I would say a bunch. And I think the budgets got lower. Once we got to the late 60s and 70s, those budgets were really struggling. You would get a lot of films where they would be reusing footage from earlier films, I guess just to save on money and stuff. And some of the sets and special effects just got worse and worse. But it's all part of the charm of those films of that era, I think. Just looking at it from a historical point of view, I think is really interesting. So here we have Son of Godzilla. And yeah, they gave Godzilla a son. And yet, he's an odd-looking character, if you will. His costume's not great. But there is the Son of Godzilla, and this film is like kind of just Godzilla being a parent and trying to, teach his son stuff and whatnot. It's not the best plot lines and whatnot. Next is Destroy All Monsters, and this is when we started being introduced, actually really in Son of Godzilla, we started being introduced to Monster Island, which is basically an island where they just put all the monsters and they all just hang out there, but people just kept coming to it like idiots, essentially, just to stir stuff up. And then next up here is probably, it's definitely one of the worst Godzilla films I think I've ever seen, and it's the worst in this set, easily. And it's called All Monsters Attack, and it's tough to describe this movie. It really is. All Monsters Attack, basically they took a lot of footage from Son of Godzilla and Destroy All Monsters and created this storyline and plot line and re-edited stuff to where this character, this young boy, has these daydreams about going to Monster Island and meeting Son of Godzilla and meeting Godzilla and all this kind of stuff. But they just reused the footage we had already seen, and he's stuck in his own plot as well, and it's not very good. It's just not very good. But next we have Godzilla vs. Hedorah. And what's interesting about Godzilla vs. Hedorah for me is that it seems very modern, especially now if you're aware of pollution and just the planet crisis and global warming and climate change and all that stuff that's affecting, our world now. This movie's commenting on it back in the 70s. Basically, Godzilla is fighting this giant toxic waste monster, essentially. And Godzilla vs. Hedorah also has the alternate title of Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. And that makes a lot of sense. Once you see this artwork, you'll understand. And next we have Godzilla vs. Gigan, which actually is pretty good. I really did enjoy this. It's an odd, almost throwback movie. This movie came out in 1972 and feels like it came out more like in the early 50s, or more like in the 50s where the first movies kind of came out. And you'll guess it's kind of a darker film just by the artwork here, and it is. Next we have Godzilla vs. Megalon. And then we have Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which is a rather iconic foe in the Godzilla Rogues Gallery. And then lastly here, we have Terror of Mechagodzilla. So that's all of the inner artwork when it comes to each of the movies. Now let's get to the discs, and this is when this set is a bit of a problem. This is similar to the Bergman set, this is similar to the Fellini set, which I just took a look at, in the way in which the discs are stored. They're becoming a problem for a lot of people, and you'll see in a second why. So you flip the page, and here you have this hard cardboard kind of layout, and there are all the discs. There are all 8 of them, all within their own little like hubs, if you will. Not only are they a problem to get out, but what is happening with a lot of these sets is the discs are starting to slip further and further into them because I guess the glue or whatever's holding them in place is starting to become undone, and it's starting to happen on this set as well. If you look up here at disc 3, there's this gap here, and it's starting to fall down, if you will. And that is a big issue because that shouldn't be happening for a set that you pay so much money for. And it's happening with a few of these discs. And what I've seen a lot of people do, they take all the discs out and put them in another case. Which is unfortunate because, as you can see, this is a gorgeous, glorious set. And it should be on display all the time. And it should be more functional. And I don't know why Criterion is continuing to go back to this not shoddy but faulty and kind of defective disc packaging. And the discs are the most important part of these sets because that's where all the movies are. But as you can see here, each of the discs are color coded, and as you can also see here, the movies are laid out in interesting ways. Disc 1 has just the first Godzilla film. That is it. Disc 2 has the second and third film, and then disc 3 is when we start going to 3 movies. And like I said, compression issues start showing up, and then the 4th disc we have 3 movies, and then for the 5th disc 2 movies, 6th disc 2 movies, 7th disc 2 movies. So it's really only discs 3 and 4 that you have those compression issues. And disc 8, like I said, is just all supplements. This set is still in print as of this recording. Like I said, the picture quality is kind of up and down, really depending on the film. And also, the quality of the film is really up and down, really all depending on what you're looking for in a Godzilla film. As I said, as they go along, they get much more ridiculous, much more lighter, but I really just love these films as a whole. I love having this set. But this has been my review of Godzilla, the Showa-Era Films, 1954 to 1975. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. If you like Godzilla, please let me know what your favorite Godzilla movie is. Or if you just don't like Godzilla at all, just say that as well. Just tell me what you think. And as always, if you like this video, please check out the other videos I have on my channel, as well as subscribing.